And this one is also our Discord pick of the week, and it's no surprise because this is a really amazing game. If you're a fan of games like Zombicide, this one isn't too far a stretch from that game, but I think it adds so much more that makes it a lot more fun, at least for me. It shares a lot of similarities in that it is scenario based, where you're going to be trying to complete different objectives that are outlined by that scenario, and you're going to be setting up the scenario according to the booklet, but each scenario is also going to come with its own little box of components and some different mechanisms that make the scenarios quite a bit different from each other. And I was really impressed with the variety that you get with these scenarios. Some of the scenarios actually feel like a completely different game in the amount of variety that they offer. But in addition to this, you can actually mix and match the scenarios with the different final bosses or elder gods that the game offers, and there's quite a lot of those as well, and they all play a little bit differently and are of varying difficulties as well. So if you feel like a scenario is too hard, you can always mix it in with one of the easier final bosses, or vice versa. But then, of course, there are a lot of different characters, and all the characters have different abilities and different upgradable abilities. And then on top of that, you're also going to mix in a different insanity with each of your characters, and that's also going to give you something of an ailment that can be very costly to you, but if you use it appropriately, it can be super beneficial. And that's where a lot of the fun comes in this game, because each of your insanities is going to be triggered by some sort of event, and you're going to be trying to time that so that when that insanity triggers, it's going to give you something beneficial. For example, your insanity could be that you are a pyromaniac, and whenever that gets activated, you're going to be setting fire to whatever location tile you're currently on, which can be really harmful if your teammates are there. But of course, if you time it right and there are a bunch of enemies there, well, it sounds a lot better if they're the ones dealing with those consequences. Or maybe instead of lighting things on fire, your illness is a little bit less deadly, and maybe you have narcolepsy and you just happen to fall asleep anytime that your insanity gets triggered. Well, the bad thing about this is that you're going to be laying your character down, and it's going to cost you an action to stand back up. But the positive thing is that when you are in your sleep state, no enemies are going to pay any attention to you, and you are completely safe. So if you are just about to die, or if you're in a room that is filled with enemies and there's no escape, well, that could be a great moment to take a little nap. You might be asking, how do these insanities actually get triggered? And this is going to happen anytime your insanity meter reaches one of these red orbs, and each player is going to be tracking this on their own personal player sheet. And the way that your insanity increases is through a variety of ways, but mainly it's through dice rolling. And there's going to be tentacles on some of the dice, and if you happen to roll that tentacle, it's going to increase your insanity. You're going to be rolling these dice anytime you enter combat, so this is always an opportunity to increase your insanity, which you might want to do to try and trigger your illness, but it also allows you to level up one of your character stats anytime that you hit one of those red orbs, so it does have a few effects that you can take advantage of, but you don't want to push it too hard, because if you ever reach the end of your insanity track, well, you go completely insane and you are eliminated from the game. So this creates a really amazing and fun dynamic where there are a bunch of competing goals here, because you want to increase your insanity so that you can level up your character, but then you also only want to hit those red orbs at certain moments so that you can maximize the effects of whatever insanity you have associated with your character. But then you also don't want to level it up too quickly, because it can cause you to completely go insane and be eliminated from the game. And of course, those dice that I was referring to are also going to be used to land hits or avoid hits, so you're not only going to be worried about the tentacles whenever you enter combat. So there are a lot of elements at play here that you are trying to manage. But it's not all death and insanity, because you can actually issue rerolls by using your stress. So it's death, insanity, and stress. And with all that said, it's no surprise that this is my favorite co-op game ever made, so this one is also my personal pick of the week. I really love this game, and every game impresses me, and every game is a lot of fun. And what I really love about this game opposed to Zombicide is the way that the enemies work. In Zombicide, I feel like I'm always managing a whole bunch of hordes of zombies, and it's a lot of overhead, and all the zombies kind of act the same, whereas all the enemies in this act very differently from each other and have very different effects. And there is still a bit of management there on the enemy's turn, but it just doesn't feel as cumbersome as it does in Zombicide. And I guess I should probably mention how you actually do win the game, and it does vary from scenario to scenario, but they all kind of follow the same structure, and that's that there's going to be some sort of objective that you're trying to achieve in order to disrupt a ritual, and once you disrupt the ritual, that's going to cause the boss monster to get summoned onto the board. But it is also possible for the boss to get summoned to the board before you disrupt the ritual, and if that happens, the boss is essentially invincible until you achieve that objective. But the way that happens is that you're going to be drawing cards at the end of each of your turn, and there's always a chance that those cards can cause the boss monster to move up this track, and if it ever hits the red area, then it's going to get summoned to the board. When this happens, you just replace the monster on the board with a token that you're going to use to track it moving forward, and then if that token ever reaches the end of the track, well then that's another way that you lose the game. But once that Elder God is summoned onto the board, players are going to be doing everything they can to try and destroy it. But of course, it won't be easy because there's going to be a whole bunch of other enemies getting in your way, and of course, you are fighting an Elder God, so that's pretty incredible already. But not only that, each Elder God is also going to be going through multiple different stages, adding new special abilities to their arsenal, which is going to make them progressively more difficult, and you're going to have to defeat them at all of their different stages if you want to win the game. Did I mention that this is a really difficult game? This new expansion is going to be a standalone edition of the game, so you can decide if you want to get just the old content or the new content or both. I did go all in the first campaign, and there is quite a lot of content there. I haven't played through all of it yet, but I do expect that I will eventually. I think I'm 3/4 of the way through all the scenarios. But that being said, every one of the scenarios is very replayable, and I have already played multiple of the scenarios over again, and it always results with a very different outcome, especially when you can change up your different characters and your insanities and the different final bosses that you're going to be going up against. So I really don't think you need all of this content, and if you're on the fence, you're probably best just choosing one or the other, whichever one looks more appealing to you, and just sticking with that. But if you're like me and this is one of your favorite games of all time, then yeah, you should probably go all in, because that's what I'm going to tell myself. And of course, this new expansion is going to be adding a lot more of the same with some new tiles, new cultists, new scenarios, and new enemies and great old ones. But it's also going to be adding a new concept of unknown monsters. And the way that these work is that you're going to be randomly selecting 2 at the start of the game. And then there's going to be certain events that will trigger those monsters being entered into the game. And you can mix those with the original content as well. And yeah, that will make an already difficult game more difficult. So if you are including those unknown monsters, then you'll probably also want to include the new module, which is the relics module. And the way that the relic cards work is that in addition to picking your character and your insanity, you'll also be able to choose a relic card at the start of the game. This is going to give you an additional special ability, and it will also get upgraded to a more powerful version of that special ability at some point in the game once you've hit a certain insanity threshold. So that's a really good tool if you want to make the game just a little bit easier, or if you want to balance it back to the difficulty that it is originally, if you're including some of these other modules that make the game more difficult. And of course, there's going to be a whole stack of new investigators that you can play as well as new discovery cards. And my most favorite addition is a bunch more insanities, because the one qualm I did have with the original game is that there's really not many insanities, and they are a ton of fun, and they actually create some pretty hilarious scenarios when they play out in certain ways. And I just always wanted to see a lot more added to the game, and I'm really glad to see that that's actually happening. But if you're as excited about this one as I am, or maybe just mildly interested, I do have the links to the campaign in the description below. And if it's launched, you can check it out, or if it hasn't launched yet, you can click that notify me button. I'm not sure if this one's going to have any freebies at the start of the campaign, but it's always good to check out on day one just in case, especially since the first campaign did have some limited pledges originally at the beginning, but eventually those pledges did open up a little bit. But if you did pledge for those limited pledges earlier, you were getting a discount as well as an earlier delivery time. Like I said, no clue if they're going to be doing that again, but that was how the original campaign was run, so it's good to check as soon as possible to see if there's anything that you can jump in on for day one.